What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have yet another album review for you, and one that we've been eager to go over because we went over this band's debut not too long ago. Actually, no, quite long ago. I think it was like 3 years ago.
Yeah, it was a while back. I don't remember how long.
3 years.
3 years.
So we are going to go over the latest offering from Summoning the Lich, Under the Reviled Throne. This also comes out on the 26th of July on Prosthetic Records. This band formed in 2017 in St. Louis, Missouri. This is their second album overall. We reviewed their debut, United in Chaos, and we actually met these guys at a show at the Sanctuary in Detroit. Super nice guys.
Yep.
Put on a hell of a show.
Yep.
And, well, we reviewed their last one a little critically, and when we ran into them, I was like, oh, man, fuck. I kind of wonder if we're going to get some backlash. I mean, we gave it 3 stars, but, I mean, we had a lot of criticisms, and, you know, generally when you criticize people's art, you know, sometimes people react poorly, but these guys actually said, no, we appreciate the fact that you guys picked it apart, and, you know, we thought that was really cool. And I was like, oh, wow, this was not the reaction I was expecting.
Right, like I thought 100%. I was like, oh boy, there they are. Oh boy, here we go. And then they were like, hey, and really happy to meet us and talk for quite some time. And they were like, yeah, thanks for the criticism. And I was like, oh, okay.
So you're not going to call us dickweeds?
All right.
All right.
I was getting ready to get punched in the face, but that did not happen.
I was getting ready to push you in front of me so you could get punched in the face. But anyway, this band I would describe as like modern death metal, melodic death metal. We made a lot of comparisons to Black Dahlia Murder, and believe me, they are warranted. But that is one of their biggest influences, and you can hear it across their album and across their work in general. The Archives also has them listed as deathcore, which it's the Archives. It is what it is. I don't necessarily fully agree with that, but I think this band is really interesting in the sense that, like, one of the things I really didn't notice about their first album were the lyrical themes. Instead of, like, going after a lot of the, like, standard death metal tropes, you know, gore, zombies, Satan, you know, kind of the standard stuff. These guys have more fantasy-geared lyrics and themes, and, I mean, looking at the art, definitely imagery, too. Mm-hmm. And that kind of, like, clicked with me on this one more so than the last one, because this one, I think, explores a lot more atmosphere and theming in terms of the pacing, which I think is very refreshing because you don't hear a lot of death metal bands go after that theme in particular, and it's really woven in this album very cleverly. And sonically, I would say this band just took the foundation of their sound and really just expanded on it, including a lot more atmosphere, melody, and more extremes on both ends of the spectrum.
Yes, that. And I will say, too, about the titles and the fantasy and whatnot, you know, I get it. Metalheads, at least all the metalheads I've met and the bands we've met over the years, like, you know, we're all nerds. We know that.
Nerds.
You know, that's a big part of death metal. That's why I love the metal community, is because we're all dorky nerds. And, like, yeah, I get it. Yeah, the songs reminded me of playing World of Warcraft, to be honest. And I didn't play Warcraft long. I had a character named Claude Balls. It was ridiculous. I loved it.
I played Baldur's Gate for a while. That was pretty fun.
I did play Baldur's Gate. In fact,
Baldur's
that
Gate
was one
was
of the few games I beat. But anyway, yeah, they've really kind of opened up their sound and allowed everything to breathe. There's definitely a lot more atmosphere. It's definitely a lot darker, too.
Yeah, way more, like, sinister moments on here. I mean, again, there's still a lot of Black Dahlia Murder, but again, I don't really have a huge problem with that because I love that band.
Right.
But what they've built around that, and I would even say, like, kind of traipsing in a territory that's more similar to, like, Job for a Cowboy or Cattle Decapitation, I think that opens up the sound. And I think the dynamics on this album are a little bit more, like, just, again, extreme, expansive. Like, there's just more going on. Right from the rip with Return to the Soil, you hear these really kind of, like, lush but cold, dissonant melodies. And then it is just right off into these crazy vocal fits, which their vocalist David Bruno, you would swear he is channeling both Trevor from Black Dahlia Murder and Travis Ryan from Cattle Decap, and maybe a little bit of Ollie from Archspire as well. The vocal cadences and flips on here are even more extreme than they were before, flying back and forth between, like, these high-pitched screams, low roars, but also adding some cleaner vocals, like, kind of cleaner in the sense of, like, Travis Ryan's catchy goblin cleans or whatever you want to call them. I like them. Praise to the Bog, the Void Gate, and the Carrion Feast all feature these relatively, like, cleaner vocals that actually carry a bit more of a tune. And then on the other side of that extreme, you got some, like, brutal burps on here, like just flat out, like kind of slam vocals.
Like on one of the first singles they released, My Horror's Unending, which is a goddamn heavy, brutal bastard. Anyway, that song, destroys. But he's even got some like frog burps, almost like pig squeals almost. And normally I bitch about that shit, but the way he puts it into the song and like just the fact that it's just there for like a second, just to throw in an added like, hey, check out what I can do sort of thing, I don't mind it. And like there's so many vocal flips going on that it's just cool to see a different dynamic added. And
they match up really well with all the like crazy changing riffs. Like you get tons of melodic harmonized tremolos, big beefy breakdown chugs, and watching the vocals sort of morph to whatever their setting is, like whether it's something more epic and sinister, like the Void Gate is a very dark and brooding and maybe like a little bit slower song, but when it hits those choruses it just sounds sinister as hell. And then the more fast rapid fire stuff where the riffs are going a mile a minute, and there's a lot of intricacy to these riffs.
Oh yes, the vocals are really cool in that aspect too, because he goes along with all the groovy syncopation that's in here. Like, he doesn't miss a beat. I swear to God, that dude read 3 books in the course of this album, because there's a lot going on. But yeah.
And they were all fantasy novels. And as I said before, I think this album plays more with atmosphere, and that kind of helps with the themes on here. Like, you have sections of, like, ambient synths and strings on here that either, like, close off a song or they pop up in a break. And they kind of, like, make it... Again, like, it matches the themes. Like, you're not thinking so much about, like, horror and darkness and evil. You're, probably specifically thinking about, like, goblins and orcs and evil sorcerers. That's still evil, but it's like fantasy evil, so it's different.
But it makes it darker, too. I don't remember there being a whole big ton of atmosphere on the last record, and this just kind of gives it, like, overall a more, like, brooding kind of sinister evil vibe to it.
I'd even go as far as to say like there's just like touches of black metal in there in terms of like some of the more like cold strumming that pops up, and definitely with some of the higher shrieks on there. It's just again like a more sinister sound overall in those sections, but I like how again it plays off of all the hefty brutal breakdowns in there. And I think the breakdowns in particular are pretty creative. Like there's a lot of like fun syncopation and such, like stuff you would hear on like aborted albums or like decapitated albums, but there's also some interesting like atmospheric elements to them, like Reviled Crystal Wielders. When the breakdown hits on there, it's broken down so much there's like a lot of empty space, and that empty space is filled with this like kind of muffled background tremolo.
Yeah. Well, that's what I like. When the breakdown hits, like a lot of them are like start-stop syncopation, which leaves a bunch of open space, and every time there is open space, that's when they fill it with these cool synths or with these cool like tremolo melodies. Like there's always something going on, but it's not too much of something going on. It doesn't dampen the songs any.
But one of my main draws, and generally one of my main draws of death metal in general, riffs. Give me riffs, and this album has tons of them. The Forest Feast, in particular, might have some of the most brutal, savage riffs. It opens up with this just sick double-time groove, these heavy tremolos, and there's these fun little, like, syncopated accents throughout the riff. It's like this little hitch in it. And then there's also, like, kind of a bend. Or a slide to it.
Yeah, that bend, it's actually in the opening riff. It's got, like, a bendy Gojira-like tremolo to it, and it just hits. Every time that bend hits, it's at the right moment in the song where you're just like, ugh.
And I gotta say, I think the drum performance in here is 3 or 4 times more intense than it was on the last one.
Yeah.
I hear like way more gravity blasts, and it's all done very tastefully. Like, despite this being a very, very blasty album, it doesn't feel cluttered. Like there's, again, enough space in between things. The riffs have room to breathe, and I think that's, a testament to the production here, which it was produced and mixed by Jack Daniels. Which is a hilarious name, but he is actually the guitarist of War of Ages. And at least in my experience, I've always thought of Jack as a solid mixer, but in terms of producer, the only thing that's produced for me is Fractured Memories and Vomit.
Yes. Yeah, no more Jack Daniels. There was one New Year's... Well, never mind. But yeah, a cool thing about the drumming again, and I think we mentioned it earlier in another review, was like the mixture between blasts and groove. Like... It's blasty and he definitely goes insane, but he also knows when to slow it down and make it more mid-tempo and really ride on the groove. And again, that plays into the syncopation, the rhythm section here as far as anything is concerned. Like, when it grooves hard. And it's not overly filled with groove. Like, you get a lot of bands like this that kind of flirt with, deathcore a little bit, or have been a little bit more groovy in the past. Like, there's just a good mixture of both groove and blasts and, like, blackened moments. It's not drawing all from one camp.
The thing that I really like about this, and to a degree I liked about the debut, is this band walks the line between, melody and brutality really well. Like, a lot of these melodeath riffs, like, yeah, they definitely have a lot of Black Dahlia Murder on them. But there's also, like, a bit of At the Gates and stuff like that, like a lot of the classic stuff, like especially on, like, Will to Survive, those heavy tremolos on there. It screams, like, very early At the Gates. And they did that pretty well on the debut. But here, like, honestly, you can hear the confidence. Like, this sounds tighter, it's more focused, it's taking more chances. I would even say it's, like, a little bit more ambitious overall. They kind of stepped outside of their main comfort zone, just long enough to really kind of embrace some other stuff and then, return to their comfort zone, because there's nothing wrong with being heavily influenced by Black Dahlia Murder. There are tons of bands that are.
It's adventurous, and you notice pretty much from the get-go, from even Return to the Soil, it's a very strong opener. Just some of the things that they start to incorporate, such as, like, dark tremolos, or a little bit more melody, or a little bit more atmosphere, like, you can just tell that they took some chances, but they landed them, and that's what's important.
And, if you're a fantasy-themed band, it should be an adventure.
Right.
It should be a rousing epic, and you should have dwarves and hobbits and dragons and balrogs and all the fun things that try to murder you in Middle-earth.
Now I gotta watch the South Park World of Warcraft episode.
Now, there were a couple of things that I could nitpick on here. I do think the song Arias Groans, while I like it, it is probably one of the more brutal, straightforward tracks on there. I do think it kind of wanders a little bit into deathcore territory, which is not bad if you like deathcore. I, kind of wishy-washy on that one. I feel like it gets a little bit more focused on the brutality and the riffs and structure of the song. It kind of sounds like, some more modern deathcore. Not like just like dumb deathcore that I don't like Lorna Shore. Like, it doesn't sound like that. It sounds like, a more musical deathcore, I guess you can say. That still feels like a dig. I still enjoyed it, but at the end, I think they kind of hit the outro a little too soon, because there's like a full minute left in the song, and it goes into the atmospheric, like, more strings and synth outros. Like, that just happened maybe a little too soon on it, and it does transition really well into Will to Survive, which I think is a standout track in there. But, yeah, that one was kind of an issue, and, I mean, I suppose that you can make, like, some slight knocks in the production if you don't like really compressed triggered drums. If that's not your thing, I can get it. I really didn't have that much of an issue with it.
As far as Arias Groans is concerned, I thought that was riffy as shit. Maybe it had a little bit too long of a, string somber section to it, but once again, these songs really flow well into each other. In fact, this album has a great flow to it in general, so I don't know if I can really knock it there, I guess, if I wanted to get nitpicky. But, as far as the drums are concerned, yes, they're compressed, but they still hit really hard. And the kick isn't overly clicky, which is cool, and that snare fires like a goddamn shotgun. So overall, I don't really think I have any real complaints. Like I said, I could definitely get nitpicky, but with this album, they've definitely shown signs of growing as a band and progressing into writing more focused songs, and like we said earlier, have become adventurous as far as, what they're willing to do and try out and experiment with. And everything that they've experimented with, I thought they landed pretty well. So overall, I'm going to give this 4 stars, and it's a pretty solid 4. Honestly, I really liked every track on this record. There are some definite hard hitters. The Forest Feast and My Horror's Unending, both those songs are heavier than shit, and I really enjoyed them. Will to Survive is a super dark, melodic piece of work. The last track, Praise to the Bog, is pretty evil sounding, and I enjoyed that. I don't know. Once again, I just like where they've gone with this record and the steps that they've taken to, again, progress as a band. Tons more atmosphere. It's blackened at times. It's a lot darker. It's riffier than shit. The drums are insane. The vocal cadences are pretty top-notch, I'm not gonna lie. Overall, 4 stars. They definitely still sound kind of like Black Dahlia Murder, but we were talking about this earlier. If that's the band they like and that's the band that got them into this and inspired them to become a band, then fuck it. I like the Black Dahlia Murder. I have no qualms in that department. Also incorporated now, you got stuff like Job for a Cowboy, Cattle Decapitation, Alter Beast and or Flub, depending on how you want to look at it, Alluvial, Ingested, Suffocation. There's even some Morbid Angel tremolos definitely going on throughout this album. So yeah, if you like all that, give this band a whirl. I really enjoyed it.
I am going to go with a 4 as well. This is a big improvement. They retained the core of their sound, but they expanded outwards. This is a bigger, more themed album too. Like, I feel like this album just flows better than the first one. It doesn't feel as much like a collection of songs. Like, this one has a flow, a theme, and I dig it. Like, it's got an interesting vibe. And again, like, the more I was able to pick up on the lyrics, it was like, dude, this is actually kind of cool that you have this, you know, kind of different theme in death metal here. The riff work, I think, is tighter. The drum work is bonkers. Phew. And the rapid fire vocals and, you know, vocal flips and crazy cadences and all that, all this comes together really well. It doesn't come across as too busy or too, like, lavish or pretentious or anything like that. It's still a fun, riffy beast of an album. And I think this band has improved quite a bit here. If you're a big fan of, like, literally all the bands we mentioned, yeah, Black Dahlia Murder. But again, Cattle Decapitation, Job for a Cowboy, stuff like that. If you like your, you know, death metal a little bit more technical, but at the same time, like, not so technical as just purely wankified.
Right.
Or if you like, you know, deathcore that leans a little bit more towards death metal, I would say some of this would probably appeal to you too. Check this out. I think this is an awesome album, and it's great to see this band, like, just get better with each release so far. So yeah, way to go, guys. Yeah, everyone, if you're big Cattle Decap fans and Black Dahlia Murder fans, check this band out. I have a feeling you're probably going to love them.
Yep.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there. It is also on our channel up in the banner in the bottom right-hand corner. But if you want to find Thralls Metal stuff, you have to go to thrallsmetal.com. We have t-shirts, both old and new. The old ones are discounted. And we even have hats, too, so if you're looking for any of that stuff, click the link down below.
And like I say on every video now, tons of stuff going on at Thralls of Metal, album reviews, discography rankings. We will get to Meshuggah, I promise you. Is it metal? Is it not metal? States of Metal, Nick's massive collection updates, because what else is he going to do with his time?
Correct.
I think we're going to start doing some more discussion things. You guys seem to latch on pretty well to our Metal Archives rant, so we're going to start doing more of those, get a little bit more interaction going on with you guys. Anyway, all this stuff that we continue to do here at Thralls of Metal, we do all for you. We genuinely appreciate everybody that's supported us along the way. All of our family, our friends, our subscribers, pretty much anyone and everyone that's been a part of Thralls of Metal. We appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you guys flat out rule, and again, tons of stuff coming your way. So one more big thank you, because you guys are awesome, and we will catch you later.